everyone, and good evening, and welcome to today's session. We may have some people that are joining us from the last half hour, or there may be some new people that are just joining us now. Everyone is welcome. Thank you for being here today. I went ahead and shared my presentation because in the last half hour, when I shared it just a little bit after showing you who's speaking to you, it made it a little bit harder for me to connect again. So apologies that you can't see my face right at this moment, but I'll see if I can do that towards the end if I haven't met you in the session. So let's go ahead and get started with the second part of the session. The first half hour, in case you missed it, we were talking about what is a whole food plant-based diet. This session is being held by Wellbeing Aid, which is an organization that strives to empower individuals to lead healthier and more fulfilling lives through evidence-based practices and sustainable lifestyle choices. My name is Maria Cecilia Mosquera. In case you weren't here in that last half hour, I am a public health preventive medicine physician, lifestyle medicine physician, obesity medicine physician, and pediatrician with a certificate in culinary coaching, which basically means I'm a lifestyle doctor who works to help people optimize their well-being, which is why I'm speaking to you today about what is the whole food plant-based kitchen and how you can set yourself up for success. As I mentioned in the last half hour, this session right now is also on the occasion of March as Nutrition Month, and also because the 4th of March was World Obesity Day. So this session is also half an hour. In case you joined us for that last half an hour, it will be divided into 3 parts: setting up your kitchen spaces, tips and tools you can use, and you can see the learning objectives there. And the last part, hopefully we'll have some time for questions, and I am watching that chat box, so go ahead and write your thoughts in the chat box. And if somebody who joined us the last half hour has a question, wants to continue with this half hour, I'm happy to do so. This session is being recorded, so if you missed it or you have to leave, it will be recorded and posted on the Wellbeing Aid Facebook page. So in the last half hour, we talked about what is a whole food plant-based way of eating. Perhaps you've already started your journey, or you're interested in how to set yourself up for success. And we talked about how in the whole food plant-based way of eating, you focus on whole grains, legumes, beans, vegetables, fruits, nuts, and seeds. So this is a picture. Actually, these are pictures from my kitchen. So this might be a variety of the types of foods you might eat on a whole food plant-based journey. So let's talk about how you set up your kitchen and home cooking habits. So think about your kitchen right now. What's in your pantry? What's in your spice cabinet? What's in your freezer? And what's in your refrigerator? What's on your kitchen table? So what are the things that you can turn to when you have come home after work and you have 15 minutes to make dinner? Or what do you turn to when you're hungry and you walk into the kitchen? Those are all the things we're going to be talking about, because the way that you set up your home environment and space can make it easier for you to achieve your goals of moving towards something like a whole food plant-based way of eating. So right now, do you have things in your house, in your pantry, that are, for example, processed foods like we talked about last hour, like some salty packaged potato chips or crisps? Are your grains that you have perhaps processed grains like white pasta, for example? Or do you have sugar-sweetened beverages? Is that what you would turn to for something to drink? In your spice cabinet, do you have seasonings that maybe have added salt or sugar? Or do you use some condiments in your refrigerator, for example, that also have added salt or sugar or oils? Or maybe they're processed and they have artificial colorings and flavorings. In your refrigerator and freezer, do you have things that come from packages, like packaged pizza, for example? Or do you have sugary desserts that might have a variety of added ingredients, and some of them might also be artificial, so these would be considered ultra-processed food. So just take stock and think about what is in your house right now. What is in your house supporting your goals? If your goals are moving towards a whole food plant-based journey, how is your kitchen helping you for your success? And note that this is different for different people. And last time we talked about SMART goals. So perhaps your SMART goal is that I'm diving in tomorrow into eating a whole food plant-based way of eating, because perhaps your partner was just hospitalized and had a heart attack and you really need to change everything today. Or maybe you're thinking about, oh, I have all this food in my house already. I'm going to work to finish it, but the new food that I buy is going to be more whole food plant based. Or maybe you say, it's too much to think about the whole kitchen. I just want to start with my freezer. Or maybe that's too much for you and you say, I only want to think about adding vegetables to lunch every day, and that's what I'm going to start with. So your SMART goal is going to be different than somebody else's, but what we want to talk about today is how can the kitchen support you. So the first part of the session, we're going to be talking about the kitchen itself. How do you set up your pantry, your spice cabinet, your refrigerator, your freezer, and or your kitchen table to support a whole food plant-based way of living? And having the foods that support you accessible or available is important, because if you want to eat more greens but you don't have any greens in either your freezer or your refrigerator, then as you know, that's going to make it a lot harder for you to eat greens. So you want to have the things ready and available. If you don't have it ready and available, it's going to make it a lot more challenging for you. So let's talk about the pantry first. As I said, these are pictures from my own house and kitchen. So you can see in my pantry, for example, I have legumes and whole grains, which are two of the biggest mainstays in the whole food plant-based way of eating, the Mediterranean diet, as we talked about last hour. Legumes, there's a wide variety of legumes that include beans, lentils. In the picture, you can see things like red lentils, yellow lentils, beluga lentils. There are white beans, there are red kidney beans, there are black chickpeas, white chickpeas, mung beans. There's so many of them. And you can think about which ones are your favorites, which ones your family enjoys. Same thing for whole grains. In my kitchen, I'm always trying out to see if I can explore new grains that we don't routinely eat on a regular basis. Over the past year, I've added things like millet and barley and black rice and red rice to our repertoire, and we've figured out dishes that we enjoy that includes all these whole grains, so that we're not only eating things like brown rice, for example. So legumes and whole grains help your body because they're full of fiber. They also have a lot of protein. Sometimes people think that the whole food plant-based way of eating does not have enough protein, which is actually not true. You can fill yourself with protein, particularly with legumes and whole grains. And one important a mainstay of the whole food plant-based way of eating is that legumes are also full of iron. These are just a few things that are beneficial in legumes and whole grains, not everything, but just to give you an idea of some of the benefits of these foods. So moving towards your spice cabinet. As we mentioned before, what is in your spice cabinet? Is it supporting your goals? Here's pictures from my spice cabinet. Food has to be tasty. So you want to have things that help optimize the way that you can enjoy your food. So maybe you have your favorites. In my kitchen, I pretty much put onion powder and garlic granules on everything. But there are other things that I use that help add a different twist of flavor to different dishes. For example, if I want it to be a little bit spicy, maybe I add some cayenne pepper. If I want it to have more of a Mediterranean feel, maybe it's going to have basil, oregano. If I want it to have something that's more Indian in nature, I might have things like coriander and cumin. If you want to add a little excitement, you can have different things like garam masala or cardamom. It's really about what you like, what your favorite flavors are, what you want to explore and enjoy, and how your spice cabinet can support your way of living. Because, for example, if you buy some pre-made mixed spices, one of the things about them is that they may actually have added salt or preservatives. So think about what's in your spice cabinet and how it can support what your goals, your SMART goals are. Now let's move towards what's in your refrigerator. This is actually my refrigerator. And you can see on the left-hand side that some of the things that make it easier for me are to prep, and we'll talk about that a little bit later, food so that's ready to eat. Because when I get home, if I don't have time to cook, we're likely to turn to something that might be less nourishing for us. So I have already cooked beans, I have already cooked whole grains, I have snacks, and there you can actually see some energy balls. I have some sprouts that we can add on things, some chopped up fruit, there's some chopped vegetables, there's some leftovers. My lunch every day is the leftovers from the night before, plus some greens, plus some seeds and nuts, and some hummus, for example. And then water. I like water to be colder temperature, so I have cold water in the fridge. So what can your refrigerator have that supports you being able to come in, grab a snack or a meal and prepare it quickly, because we know we all have busy lives. Same thing for your drawers in your refrigerator. So these are fruits and vegetables that I wash and have ready, so that you can just open the drawer and pull out a fruit. Or maybe you can have some chopped, carrots or chopped or small baby cucumbers or baby bell peppers, things that you can basically just grab and eat. Grab and eat, grab and prep. Anything that makes it easier for you to be able to turn to these first as snacks and foods, and have them ready and accessible to enjoy. Also in your freezer. I mentioned before that I like to prep things like beans and rice, which we're going to talk about later, and I stick some. So if I make a big batch of chickpeas, I might freeze one container of it so that if I'm running a little late one day, I can just defrost it, stick it in a quick dish. Maybe I'll make some quick chickpeas plus some brown rice and a chopped vegetable, and that's it. That's our easy meal of the day. So here are some I might have made an African peanut stew, and I might have made too much, so I froze on purpose. So I froze a container of it. So if I'm running, late, I just defrost it and serve it with, some rice, for example, or another whole grain like quinoa. So having cooked legumes, cooked whole grains, and cooked dishes in your freezer can also be helpful. For myself, some of the things that I enjoy the least in the kitchen are chopping onions and garlic and ginger. And I find that if I buy fresh ginger, it tends to go bad. I don't use it as much as if I have frozen ginger. So I actually have chopped frozen ginger, garlic, onions, shallots, sometimes red onions in my freezer. Sometimes I do it myself in a big batch, and then I just freeze it. But many times I just buy it straight from the store. Same thing for edamame. Sometimes if I need to, I buy some herbs that I don't use very frequently, like dill, and I buy frozen chopped dill so that it doesn't go bad, because I don't like to waste food, and I just only have it there when I need it. So your freezer doesn't just have to have, ice, for example. There can be lots of things in there that make it easier for you to turn to them and prepare something like a dinner quickly. I just throw some garlic and ginger and onions in a pot, and every day, actually 2 or 3 times a week, and add some greens and some chopped up veggies, and that becomes my mixed green dish for the week that I put as the base for my lunch every day, onto which I add some beans and a whole grain and some seeds and nuts. So this makes it a lot easier. I thoroughly enjoy the capacity of not having to chop onions. So same thing for frozen fruit. My husband actually loves to eat frozen fruit for breakfast. He takes it and defrosts it, and makes it a lot easier to have oatmeal in the morning. So a whole drawer in my freezer is frozen fruit. So maybe that might make it easier for someone like us, that is looking for a quick way to have breakfast in the morning but doesn't want to be chopping fruit. So that's your freezer. Also, your kitchen table. So if you're hungry, and the kitchen table happens to be a place where we keep some snacks. So if you have fresh fruit that's ready to eat, like these lovely tangerines, which are in season right now where I am in Cyprus, versus some roasted chickpeas, which I had the other day on my table, so that if my daughter was hungry, she could just turn and pick up some savory roasted chickpeas and a tangerine, and it was already on the table, a quick snack, without having to think about it. Same thing for the granola. I tend to keep the granola next to the table, which can be a snack, or it's actually something that we put on those frozen fruits that we defrost in the morning to eat for breakfast, and it makes a super quick breakfast. So what is on your kitchen table? How can it support a whole food plant-based way of eating? So that was the first part of the session. For the second part, let's go through some tips and tools that make it easier for you to enjoy and live this way of eating. So one is, we talked about how you want to focus on whole foods that are plant-based. And maybe you are not new to this journey. Maybe you've already been doing this. So for example, for me, I'm trying to optimize the way that I think about the foods that I put on my plate and on my family's plate. And so one of the things that I focus on is variety. So as an example, you can actually see that plate was something I had for lunch, and I counted how many different types of foods, herbs were in that meal, and it was more than 14, and it's packed full of fiber, protein, iron, phytochemicals, etc. So I try to think about, some people say, for example, we've done this as a family too, can you reach 30 different types of fruits, vegetables, and herbs every week? And you can see that in just one lunch, I already had 14 different types of fruits and vegetables. So that's one of my personal goals because I've already been on this journey that I continue to work on. If you're already on this journey, that might be something that you think about is not eating the same foods every day, but are there other things that you want to try that are new that you can add? Because having variety is actually important for your gut microbiome, which has a slew of importance in many, many different aspects of health. The other thing is adding things like seeds and nuts, which I've also started incorporating myself even more because if you want to optimize bone health, for example, seeds and nuts have magnesium. They also have healthy fats like omega-3s, like chia seeds, as well as hemp seeds and ground flax seeds. So including seeds and nuts in your diet, I put it, for example, on top of my breakfast. I put oatmeal and I just put chopped fruits and I add all kinds of seeds like chia and hemp seeds and ground flax, or I put it on that lunch salad that you see here, or we put it on dinner. And then on the right hand side of the screen, you see you can change it up. So for me, actually, we don't eat mushrooms so frequently, and I want to eat more of them. So that's been one of my SMART goals, is trying to incorporate mushrooms at least once a week in my household in the recent time frame. Because, for example, that's not something that I eat, and I want to add a variety of nutrients that I'm not having or my family's not having every day. And mushrooms happen to have, for example, B vitamins, selenium, potassium, etc. So what are the ways that you, based on what you're eating or want to be eating, can optimize the food on your plate and how it nourishes your body, the nutrients that you're getting? So variety, thinking about things like seeds and nuts, and thinking about changing up your weekly routine of foods. I usually like to see if there's a new fruit or vegetable that I haven't been eating or have never eaten that I can try. Anything that adds variety and nutrients to your food in your week. As I mentioned before, having healthy snacks on hand. So if you have that kitchen table with fruits, but also prepared chopped vegetables, if you have nuts and seeds, these are some snacks that we might eat at home. Some apples with some almond butter, some hummus with some veggies, maybe some dried nuts, some dried unsalted cashews. We like to make energy balls. That one that you see in the picture has dried goji berries, oats, chopped up dates, cinnamon, and it has a little bit of dark chocolate chips. And the roasted chickpeas on the top right hand image are actually cooked, then roasted in the oven. I add some spices like that lovely ground onions and garlic that I talked about, plus some paprika and some cayenne. And that's a savory snack. Or you can just eat them plain or with a tiny bit of sea salt if you add salt to your foods. Also, I take plain roasted chickpeas and we enrobe them in dark chocolate. And we make these little clusters. It may sound a little bit strange to you if you've never tried it, but I promise it tastes great. My daughter can vouch for that. So having healthy snacks in your refrigerator, on your countertop that you can turn to when you're hungry, make sure that you can turn to these types of snacks as opposed to, for example, having to stop at a vending machine or having to being hungry and going to your nearby kiosk. Okay. And the other thing I said before is that food should taste good, right? So make sure that you have things that in your house, in your kitchen, that can help you add flavor. So I tend to have one or two or sometimes three different types of tasty sauces that I can add to that lunch salad bowl or grain bowl that I eat every day. For example, here's a peanut ginger garlic sauce or a spicy cilantro sauce, any type of sauce, because if you think about having chickpeas with rice and a vegetable, that's a little bit less exciting than chickpeas, rice, and a vegetable with a lovely tasty sauce on top. Same thing for vinegars. Balsamic vinegar is great to combine with your greens for people that have heard about nitric oxide, but also any other type of vinegar. And there are even flavored balsamic vinegars that don't have added processed foods, but can add some exciting flavor to your foods. Same thing for herbs. And things like lemon, for example, as well. So think about the whole food plant-based way of eating can actually be delicious. It doesn't have to be something that you don't look forward to. It can actually be exciting. So what are the things you can have in your kitchen that add flavors? And I do see that somebody's written a question in the chat box. Thank you so much for that. I will address that in just a few minutes, but thank you for adding that question. So I've given a couple of tips, and then I just want to mention some tools that can help. So on the left-hand side, you can actually see picture of my favorite kitchen tools. Probably everybody that cooks has some type of favorite tools, but think about that. Really, all you need is a place to cut, and usually a cutting board and a knife, right? With that, you can basically make almost anything that's whole food plant based. But there may be some other tools that you might make it easier for you. I like to have measuring cups. I like to have a zester so I can zest things like lemons and oranges. I like to have scissors because instead of chopping, I tend to cut things like green onions, for example, with scissors. Um, and I like to have a food scraper. But I also have some favorite appliances because in a whole food plant-based way of eating, you eat a lot of legumes. So having something like an electric pressure cooker can make your life a whole lot easier because that way you don't have to watch the chickpeas cooking. You can just set a timer and let them cook, and you can cook a whole bunch of them at the same time. In the other item in the picture is an air fryer, which I utilize as well. So those are some appliances. Food prep. So I eat a lot of legumes in my house, and what I do is the night before, actually the morning of or the night before, I just take a bowl and put some legume in it and add some water. And it sits there on my counter until the next day, so that it's soaking and ready to cook. And then I mentioned before that I do something called batch cooking. So in that big pressure cooker, I will put, instead of just 1 cup of dried chickpeas, I might put 2 cups of dried chickpeas. And what that makes is a whole bunch of chickpeas. And so what I do is I put them in containers, some in the fridge and some in the freezer. And that way, the next time they're already ready. It didn't actually take me more time to make it. It actually saves me time because the pressure cooker can cook 1 cup or 2 cups just as easily. But what it does is it make it so that if I'm running late, I already have a cooked container of chickpeas in my freezer that I can then take and mix with some tomato sauce and some spices, for example, to make a chickpea tikka masala. And it saved me time and made it more likely for me to eat these legumes. So batch cooking just means you take something and cook more of it than you're going to eat right at that moment. Okay, so the last item is repurposing, which is one of my favorite things because I don't like to waste food. So if I'm going to be making a whole pot of chickpeas, we might be eating chickpeas many different ways in my house that week. So as I mentioned to you, we even eat chickpeas as desserts, chocolate covered. So I do this basically every other day. So if I made some beans earlier this week, for example, my fridge right now, I have some white beans. Probably tomorrow or the next day, because I just made these white beans and cooked them plain. I'm going to combine them with some leftover quinoa, plus some spices and some veggies, and form them into either little falafel-shaped balls or a veggie burger, and stick it in my air fryer, and we'll eat a veggie burger sandwich, or we'll eat a falafel sandwich and a whole grain pita, for example. So I reuse those white beans that I might have cooked with some pasta, whole grain pasta, for example, and make them into a veggie burger. So repurposing is a great way because, there's no reason we should waste food, and it makes it more exciting if you can eat different kinds of foods. I like to eat something different as much as I can and not eat the same exact thing every day. So we've talked a lot about how you can think about your kitchen. That may seem like a bit too much for people that are just starting. If so, just remember you can watch the last session if you didn't before to know that the goal is to start small. This is not meant to be overwhelming. You set a SMART goal. And your SMART goal might be, as I said before, I want to eat greens for lunch every day for the next 1 week, and I'm starting tomorrow. And so what you want to do is look at your kitchen and make sure that you have greens in your refrigerator or your freezer that are washed and ready to eat so that you can pull them out and have them ready. Maybe you're going to batch cook some greens like I do. I cooked actually some yesterday that I'm going to be eating for the next 3 days for lunch with a whole bunch of veggies and spices. So think about foods, tools, not just physical tools, but things like batch cooking and repurposing that support a whole food plant-based way of eating and make it not only easier but delicious. Your kitchen should work for you and your lifestyle. And as I said at last session, for those that haven't heard, and the goal is progress, not perfection. And every little step in the right direction helps. As I mentioned before, you do want to talk to your doctor or dietitian. If you're new to the whole food plant-based journey, there are some things that you also want to keep track of. For example, you want to make sure you're getting enough of the vitamins and nutrients that you need with the way that you're eating, or that you don't need any supplements. So just make sure you discuss your journey and get their support, but also make sure that they're monitoring you for your progress and for anything that you need. So to summarize, you want to have foods in your kitchen that support your lifestyle: fruits, vegetables, legumes, whole grains, nuts, and seeds, but also tools, and not just physical tools, but do things like prep. Soak those chickpeas, just stick them in a vat of water the night before or the morning of. Do some batch cooking, repurpose foods. There's no reason this way of eating should be more expensive. In fact, in many ways, it can be cheaper, and it definitely can be more nutritious. Your body can appreciate much more nutrients. It can be definitely better for your health. So here is the feedback form. I'm going to put it in the chat box in just a moment. Like I asked before, last session, is think about if there's one thing you're going to take with you from today's session. And before I turn to questions, I just want to point out that we do have a webinar 1 week from today. That one is not a mini webinar. It's a 1-hour session on sleep. So feel free to join us next week for that. It will be on the Wellbeing Aid page. Here are the references and resources. And now I'm going to turn to questions. So let me just